When the Nazis said they were going to speak in Evanston at Lovelace Park, at first I didn't think much about it. They said they were going to march in Skokie a few years earlier, and it would turn out to be a publicity stunt. But as the time went on, and it seemed like it was actually going to happen, I got more and more upset. I mean, being a Jew had never been a problem for me. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. There were synagogues, delicatessens. On the high holidays, the school was empty. Everybody was out. And when I went to college, I went to Harvard, a liberal community. Now, there was some anti-Semitism there. There were some final clubs that I couldn't join, but they had a lot of Jews. And when my wife and I decided to settle down, we picked Evanston, a large Jewish population, a large black population. And so being a Jew had never been a problem. And now the Nazis were going to invade my territory. Our rabbi said, don't go there. We're going to have a counter-demonstration at the lake. Don't give them the honor of a crowd. But I had to go. I didn't want the Nazis to say, a mile from my house, you can kill Jews. Now, I didn't know what I was going to do. I'm not a violent man. I thought, well, I'll yell. Maybe we'd just drown them out so we can't hear them. Now, when I got there, it had a 60s feel first. I mean, people were singing. Some people were doing horrors. There were groups all over. Jewish groups, Never Again. Black groups, the Nazis hate blacks too. Women's groups, equality is genderless. Ecology groups, Save the Whales. Everybody marching around with signs. And a guy walking through the crowd, I mean, probably a lot of guys walking through the crowd saying, okay, no violence, no violence. You know, what we're going to do, we're going to yell when they speak, we'll drown them out. But to remember, no violence. And he walked by me, and there was a big guy standing there, and he looked at me and he said, no violence. Yeah, did they say that in Warsaw? Did they say that in Jerusalem? You know what I'm going to do? As soon as a Nazi begins talking, I'm going to rush down there and I'm going to choke him to death. And then he walked away, and I thought, you know, there's crazies in every crowd. Now, as the day went on, it got more and more serious. More and more police came. Their cars lined the park. There was a police helicopter in the air. And I saw what was going to happen. There was a maintenance building at the edge of the park. And I could see that the Nazis could park by it and take up a space in front of it. The maintenance building would cover their back, and there was like this concrete opening in front of it. And I figured the police would stand there to protect the Nazis. So we got the police, the Nazis, and the building. Now, when the riot police came, that's when it got really serious for me. They came off a bus, and they looked like gladiators. They were wearing helmets, and they had shields and clubs, and sure enough, they took up that space in front of that maintenance building. They had 5 rows of 10. I was standing right next to a yellow rope they'd used to cordon off the area. And next to me, there was this little man, and he was talking to himself. He was muttering. And finally, he looked at me, and he said, look, I was in the camps. In Germany, they could do whatever they wanted. They were in power. But here we're going to protect them. His wife said, that's America. Everybody gets to say what they want. He said, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Now, all of a sudden, somebody yelled, they're coming. And a chant began, Nazis no, Nazis no, Nazis no. And I looked up, and you know what I saw? I saw a junker. A junker. Its fender was dented. Its bumper was tied up with a rope. It was burning oil. And I thought, this is what we're so excited about, 5 guys in a junker? And then they stepped out, and it was like electricity went through the crowd. They were wearing Nazi uniforms. 2 were in SS uniforms. And the chant changed, kill the Nazis, kill the Nazis, kill the Nazis. And they did something that, I don't know, it was like I had seen it before. They just stood there in a circle, ignoring us, smoking cigarettes and talking. And then finally they formed a line, and one stepped out with a bullhorn, and he began to speak. Now the crowd got louder and louder, but you could hear that bullhorn over all of our yelling. Rocks began to fly through the air. The man with the bullhorn, he stepped back. Everybody cheered, and then he stepped up again, and he began to speak again, and again we were screaming so loud. And yet you could still hear him. It was as if he were gaining strength from all the hatred around him. And then a brick flew through the air, and it hit a policeman, knocked him down. And the chant changed, kill the pigs, kill the pigs, kill the pigs. And then on my left, I saw a guy get under the rope and start to run to the Nazis. It was that guy. He got through the first 2 lines. I think they were just surprised that he would actually do it. And they clubbed him to the ground when he reached the 3rd line. And then a second man went under the rope, and he was clubbed down, and then a third, and then a fourth, and both of those were clubbed down, and the little man on my right yelled, "Never again," and he was under the yellow rope. And his wife, she dove at him. She grabbed his leg. He was dragging her along the ground. She was wearing a wig that, was now coming off, and she was yelling, stop him, they're going to kill him, they're going to kill him. And I was under the rope. And it wasn't to save that old man. I wanted to kill the Nazis. I wanted to take that bullhorn and shove it down the Nazi's throat. Well, thank God, by the time I reached the police, they knew they had a potential riot on their hands. And so they had already bundled the Nazis into their car. And when I hit that first line, the policeman gave me a bear hug. And he yelled, "Hey, it's over, calm down, it's over, they're leaving." And I looked up, and sure enough, they were driving away. And then in minutes, the crowd left. They would write this up as a victory. We had stopped the Nazis from speaking. But there was no victor on that field. I knew that as I stood there, shaking from the adrenaline in me and feeling the rage, that the only victor on this field was hate. I looked over, and the men who had been clubbed to the ground were leaning against a maintenance building. An ambulance had arrived, bathing the park in those blue and red lights. The old man, he was still sitting on the ground. His wife was smoothing his head. She kept saying, "It's okay, it's okay, it's over, it's over, it's okay." But he didn't answer her. He just sat there, staring off into space.